The invitation arrived 3 days after the man in the black coat died. I remember the date because I had written it on the inside cover of my notebook. October 17th. The envelope was waiting beneath my apartment door when I came home from work. There was no stamp, no return address. My name was written across the front in black ink. Not printed. Written. Daniel Mercer. The handwriting was neat enough to look deliberate, but there was something wrong with it. The letters seemed slightly too narrow, as though whoever had written them had learned English by copying words from old documents. I stood in the hallway for several seconds without touching it. My building was old, the kind of place where strangers wandered in behind residents because nobody wanted to argue with them. Packages disappeared. Flyers appeared under doors. Once someone left a dead pigeon on the 3rd floor. But this envelope had not been delivered by mistake. It had been placed directly beneath my door, and whoever had left it had done so quietly. I knew because I had been inside my apartment less than 10 minutes earlier. I had forgotten my keys. I had gone back downstairs. The hallway had been empty. When I returned, the envelope was there. I bent down. The paper was thick, almost like parchment. When my fingers touched it, I felt a faint warmth. That was the first thing that frightened me. Not because it was hot, because the hallway was cold. My building's heating system had been broken for almost a week. I picked up the envelope. The warmth disappeared. I stared at it. Then I unlocked my apartment. I did not open it immediately. I put it on my kitchen table and made coffee. I was the sort of person I was back then. I had spent most of my adult life believing that if something could not be explained immediately, it probably had an ordinary explanation waiting somewhere. I worked as a historical document conservator for a private archival firm in Boston. My job was mostly preservation: old letters, diaries, church records, property deeds, occasionally manuscripts that had spent centuries in conditions no human being would willingly sleep in. I knew how paper aged. I knew how ink behaved. I knew the difference between genuine parchment and modern imitation. I knew that fear could make ordinary things look extraordinary. That belief had served me well until October 17th. I opened the envelope at 11:42 p.m. There was a single sheet inside, no letterhead, no signature, only 6 lines. I read them once, then again, then a third time. Daniel Mercer, you have been selected to witness the trial. You are requested to appear at St. Bartholomew's Chapel on October 21st at 11 p.m. Come alone. You will be permitted to leave when the judgment has been spoken. Do not bring a Bible. I stared at the final sentence for a long time. Then I laughed. It was not because I found it funny. It was the kind of laugh people make when something is too strange to fit comfortably inside their understanding of the world. I turned the paper over, blank. I checked the envelope. Nothing. I held it beneath the kitchen light. No watermark, no hidden writing, no seal. I took a photograph of it with my phone. The screen went black. Not the phone. The screen. For about 3 seconds, it showed nothing but darkness. Then the photograph appeared. I zoomed in. My kitchen table was visible. The envelope was visible. But there was something else. Behind me. A dark, vertical shape standing in the doorway. I turned around so quickly that the chair struck the wall. There was nothing there. I checked the hallway. Empty. Bathroom. Empty. Bedroom. Empty. Closet. Empty. I returned to the kitchen. The photograph was still on my phone. I deleted it. Then I emptied the recently deleted folder. I slept with the lights on. At 3:17 in the morning, someone knocked on my apartment door 3 times. Slowly. I did not move. Another 3 knocks. I looked through the peephole. Nobody. I waited. Then I heard a voice from the other side, my mother's voice. She had been dead for 11 years. "Daniel?" I stopped breathing. The voice came again. "Daniel, open the door." My mother had been dead since I was 26. Cancer, pancreatic. She had spent her final month in a hospital room overlooking a parking garage. I had been there when she died. I had held her hand. I had watched the monitor flatten. There were no mysteries about her death, no unanswered questions, no supernatural circumstances. She was dead, and yet her voice was standing on the other side of my apartment door. "Daniel?" I backed away. The voice became softer, almost embarrassed. "I'm cold." I covered my mouth with both hands. That was something my mother used to say when she wanted me to bring her a blanket. "I'm cold." I stayed there until sunrise. The knocking never came again. At 7:03 a.m., I opened the door. There was nobody outside. But something had been left on the floor, a small black object. I picked it up. It was an old brass key. Attached to it was a paper tag. 3 words were written on the tag: St. Bartholomew's Chapel. I did not go to work that morning. Instead, I searched for the chapel. There were several churches named St. Bartholomew's in Massachusetts, but only one matched the address written beneath the name on the tag. The building had been abandoned in 1968, at least according to the records I could find. It stood approximately 70 miles north of Boston, beyond a town called Bellwether. I had never heard of Bellwether. That bothered me more than it should have. I had spent years working with historical records from New England. Bellwether did not appear on any modern Massachusetts map. I checked older maps. Nothing. I searched county records. Nothing. Then I searched newspaper archives. Again, nothing. The town did not seem to exist, yet the chapel did. At least on one document. A property survey dated 1891. The survey showed a small stone building surrounded by forest. Under the building was a notation: St. Bartholomew's Chapel, restricted access. There was no explanation. I printed the survey. Then I called my friend, Dr. Elias Ward. Elias was a professor of religious history at a university in Cambridge. He specialized in early Christian manuscripts and apocryphal traditions. If anyone could tell me what I was dealing with, it was him. He came to my apartment that afternoon. He read the invitation twice. Then he looked at me. "Where did you get this?" "Under my door." "When?" "Last night." He picked up the paper again. "Did you write this?" "No." "Do you know who did?" "No." He turned the page over. "Have you shown this to anyone else?" "No." He was silent. Then he asked, "Why does it say not to bring a Bible?" "I was hoping you could tell me." He did not answer. Instead, he walked toward my bookshelf. My collection of religious texts occupied 3 shelves. Elias ran his finger along the spines. He stopped at a 17th century facsimile of a manuscript catalog. "Do you remember the man who came to your office last month?" I frowned. "What man?" "The one in the black coat." My stomach tightened. "You saw him?" "No." "Then how do you know about him?" Elias turned around. "You told me about him." I had forgotten. 3 weeks earlier, a man had come to the archive carrying a box of documents. He had refused to give his name. He had refused to sign the visitor register. He had asked for me specifically. The box contained 12 manuscripts, all religious, all damaged. The pages had been burned around the edges, but the writing in the center remained intact. The strange thing was that Every manuscript described some version of the same event, a trial. Not a trial of a human being, a trial involving a being that had once stood before God. I had assumed the manuscripts were medieval folklore. The man's only request had been that I preserve them. He had paid in cash. Then he left. 2 days later, I heard he had died. At least that's what Elias told me. I looked at him. You said he died. I did. How? Heart failure. Where? Elias hesitated. St. Mary's Hospital. I felt the room becoming colder. That's impossible. Why? Because I saw him after that. Elias stared at me. When? The night before the envelope arrived. His expression changed. I told him what had happened. I had been leaving work around 9:30 p.m. The archive was almost empty. I was walking toward the elevator when I saw the man in the black coat standing at the end of the corridor. He was facing away from me. I recognized him immediately. I called out. He turned. His face looked exactly as I remembered. Pale, thin, deep-set eyes, no expression. He did not speak. He simply raised one hand and pointed toward the archive room. Then the lights went out. When they came back, he was gone. I had assumed I was exhausted. I had assumed I had imagined him. Elias listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked one question. Did he say anything? No. Are you certain? Yes. Elias looked toward the window. The sun was already disappearing. Then we have a problem. What kind? The kind that begins when a dead man starts giving invitations. I tried to laugh. He didn't. Instead, he asked me to bring him the manuscripts. I did. They were stored in a climate-controlled cabinet at the archive. I was not supposed to remove them without authorization. I removed them anyway. There were 12. Elias examined the first, then the second, then the third. His face became increasingly pale. What? He didn't answer. He opened the fourth. A drawing appeared on the page, a circle. Inside the circle was a human eye. Around the eye were 7 small marks. Underneath was a line of text written in Latin. Elias translated it quietly. The witness must not speak before the judgment. He turned the page. Another symbol, a chair, empty. Behind it, a doorway. What's this? I asked. He shook his head. Nothing. That's not nothing. He closed the manuscript. Daniel, these aren't Christian manuscripts. They contain Christian language. That doesn't make them Christian. What are they? He stared at me. I don't know. That frightened me. Elias always knew, or at least he always pretended to. I watched him open another manuscript. This one contained a series of names. Some were written in Greek, some in Latin, some in a script I did not recognize. But one name was written clearly in English. Lucifer. Elias stopped. I said nothing. He continued reading. The word appeared again, and again, and again. Not as a title, not as a theological reference, as a participant, a defendant. I looked at Elias. Trial. He nodded. That's what the invitation means. Whose trial? He closed the manuscript. His. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I said, "You're telling me someone invited me to witness the trial of Lucifer?" "No." "Then what are you telling me?" Elias looked directly at me. "I'm telling you that somebody believes such a trial is going to happen." I wanted to dismiss it. I wanted to laugh again. But the manuscripts were real. The invitation was real. The key was real. And my mother's voice had spoken from behind my door. Elias placed the manuscript back into the box. "Don't go." I looked at him. You believe this? I believe someone wants you to go. That isn't the same thing. No, he stood. It's worse. He walked toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped. Destroy the invitation. I already tried. His head turned. What do you mean? I burned it. He stared at me. When? Last night. Where? Sink. Show me. I took him to the kitchen. The metal sink contained a small pile of black ash. Elias looked at it, then at me. That's impossible. What? He crouched down. He touched the ash with one finger. The black residue moved, not from the air, against it. It gathered into a thin line, then another. Letters formed. 3 words. See you there? Elias stood very slowly. I stepped backward. Neither of us spoke. The ash remained on the sink. Then the kitchen light flickered. Once, twice. The refrigerator stopped humming. The apartment became completely silent. Elias whispered, Daniel? What? Don't look behind you. Every muscle in my body tightened. Why? Because I can see someone standing behind you. I did not turn. I stared at Elias. His face had gone white. Who? He swallowed. I don't know. The thing behind me moved. I heard one footstep, then another. Wood creaked beneath its weight. Elias whispered something. What did you say? He looked terrified. I said your mother is not behind you. The footsteps stopped. A voice spoke from directly behind my right shoulder. It was not my mother's voice. It was mine. Daniel, I closed my eyes. The voice continued. You have been invited because the dead cannot testify. I opened my eyes. Elias was staring at something over my shoulder. Who are you? He asked. The voice answered. I am not the one on trial. Then every light in the apartment went out. When they came back, Elias was gone. His coat was still hanging by the door. His phone was still on my kitchen table. His glasses were lying beside the manuscripts, but Elias himself had vanished. I searched the entire apartment, nothing. I called his phone. It rang. From somewhere inside the wall, I called again. The ringing came from the same place. I put my ear against the plaster. The phone rang once more. Then Elias whispered from inside the wall. Daniel. I stepped away. His voice was faint, muffled, terrified. Don't come looking for me. I could barely breathe. Elias? There was a long silence. Then he said something that I still remember, word for word. Whatever happens on the 21st, don't let them ask you what you saw. The line went dead. I stood alone in my kitchen until morning. I did not sleep. At 8:12 a.m., I went to the police. They searched my apartment. They found no sign of Elias. They checked security footage. He had entered my building at 2:14 p.m. He had never left. The footage showed me entering my apartment alone. Then at 6:03 p.m., the camera outside my door malfunctioned for exactly 47 minutes. When it came back online, Elias was gone. The police officer assigned to the case asked me if Elias had been under psychological stress. I said no. He asked if we had argued. I said no. He asked if Elias had enemies. I said probably. Everyone does. The officer wrote something down. Then he looked at me. Mr. Mercer, there's something you should know. What? We found something in your apartment. He placed a photograph on the table. It showed the inside of my bedroom, my bed, my window, my closet, and the wall above the bed. There was writing on it. I had not seen it before. The letters were large, written in something dark, not blood, ink, 4 words. The witness has arrived. I stared at the photograph. Then I noticed something beneath the writing. A symbol. The same circle. The same eye. The same 7 marks. I recognized it immediately. It was the symbol from the manuscripts. But there was something different. The 7th mark was missing. And underneath the symbol, someone had written a date, October 21st. The police never found Elias. His disappearance was eventually classified as unexplained. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering calls. I slept at my sister's house for 2 nights. On the 3rd night, I woke at exactly 3:17 a.m. There was someone standing at the foot of my bed. I knew who it was before I opened my eyes. The man in the black coat. He stood perfectly still. His face was pale. His eyes looked almost black in the darkness. He held something in his hand, a small brass key. The same key I had found beneath my door. He placed it on the floor. Then he said, October 21st. I could not move. He smiled. It was the first time I had seen him smile. And somehow that frightened me more than anything else. 11 o'clock. He turned toward the bedroom door. Before leaving, he stopped. Come alone. Then he looked back at me. And Daniel? Yes? His smile disappeared. Don't bring God with you. He walked through the closed bedroom door. I remained in bed until sunrise. On October 21st, I drove north. I told myself I was going because I needed answers. That was the lie I used. The truth was simpler. Somewhere inside me, beneath reason and fear and everything I believed about the world, I already knew that the invitation was not a request. It was a summons. Bellwether appeared on my GPS at 10:14 p.m. There was no road marked on the map, yet my car continued moving along one. The forest became thicker. The road narrowed. Fog settled between the trees. At 10:47 p.m., I saw the chapel. It stood alone in a clearing. Stone walls, broken windows, a bell tower without a bell, no lights, no cars, no signs of human life. I parked outside. The brass key was in my pocket. I walked toward the door. The closer I got, the colder the air became. I touched the handle. The door opened before I turned the key. Inside was darkness. Then I heard something. A sound coming from beneath the chapel. Not a voice, not machinery. A deep, slow vibration. Like something enormous breathing underground. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me. A single candle burned at the far end of the chapel. Beside it stood 7 empty chairs. 6 were arranged in a semicircle. The 7th faced them. An old wooden table stood in the center. On it was a Bible. I froze. The invitation had told me not to bring one. It had not said I would find one there. I took a step closer. The Bible was open. I could not see the page from where I stood. I moved forward. The page contained no words, only a blank sheet. Then ink began appearing. Slowly, one letter at a time. I watched the sentence form. The human witness will speak last. The underground vibration stopped. The chapel became silent. Then the doors at the far end opened. There was no one there. Beyond them was a staircase descending into darkness. A bell rang somewhere below, one, and then again, then a 3rd time. And from the darkness beneath the chapel, a man's voice called my name. Not loudly, not angrily, almost politely. Daniel Mercer. I stood at the top of the stairs. The voice came again. Please come down. I recognized it. It was Elias. I took 1 step downward, then another. And as I reached the 3rd stair, every candle in the chapel behind me went out at once. A voice whispered directly beside my ear. You should have brought the Bible. I turned. There was nobody there. Then I looked down the staircase. At the bottom, beneath the chapel, 7 figures were sitting around a stone table. 6 were facing me. The 7th had its back turned. I could not see its face, but I knew who it was. Not because someone told me, not because I recognized the clothing. I knew because every person at the table slowly lowered their heads when I appeared. Every one of them, except the 7th. The 7th figure remained perfectly still. Then a hand reached up and rested on the back of the empty chair. A man's voice spoke from the darkness. Calm, almost gentle. "Bring the witness forward." I took another step down, and the figure in the 7th chair finally turned toward me. It had my face. For several seconds, I could not understand what I was looking at. The man sitting in the 7th chair looked exactly like me. Not similar, not close. Me. Same dark hair, same narrow scar beneath my left eyebrow from the bicycle accident when I was 14. Same crooked little finger on my right hand. Even the small, pale mark along my jaw that had never appeared in photographs, unless the lighting was right. He was wearing my clothes. The gray sweater I had put on that morning, the black trousers, the old brown boots. I looked down at myself, the same clothes, the same hands, the same scar. The man at the table smiled. I did not. "Come closer," he said. His voice was mine, too. I remained on the stairs. Below him, the other 6 figures sat perfectly still. They were dressed differently. One wore what looked like a 19th century priest's robe. Another wore a dark military uniform I could not identify. A woman sat with both hands folded on the table. Her clothes looked modern, but her face was unnaturally pale. The remaining 3 wore long black garments that concealed almost everything except their hands. I noticed something about those hands. None of them had fingernails. The skin simply continued over the tips of the fingers. I looked back at the man wearing my face. "Oh, who are you?" He leaned forward. "You know?" "No." "Yes." His eyes remained fixed on mine. "You've known for longer than you remember." I felt something tighten inside my chest. The voice coming from the chapel above us had disappeared. The only sound was the low vibration beneath the floor. "Where is Elias?" The man smiled again. "You brought him here." "I didn't." "You opened the door." "I didn't know where it led." "It doesn't mean you didn't open it." I looked at the others. "Who are they?" No one answered. The woman slowly lifted her hand. She pointed to the empty chair beside the table. "Sit." Her voice was old, older than her face. I did not move. She pointed again. "Witnesses do not stand." I looked at the chair. It was the only empty seat. A strip of red cloth had been tied around its back. Something had been embroidered into the cloth. The same symbol, the circle, the eye, 7 marks. Except this time, all 7 marks were present. I stepped down, one stair, then another. The man with my face watched me. "You're making a mistake," I said. "No." He looked almost sad. "You already made it." When I reached the bottom, the vibration beneath the stone became stronger. I could feel it through my boots. The stone table had no legs. It seemed to grow directly out of the floor. There were scratches across its surface, hundreds of them. Some looked like names. Others were dates. I leaned closer. The newest mark had been carved that night, October 21st. Beneath it was my name, Daniel Mercer. I stepped back. "Who carved that?" The man wearing my face looked at the name. "You did." "I've never been here." He tilted his head. "Not this time." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" The priest-like figure finally spoke. His voice was almost inaudible. "The witness has returned." The woman corrected him. "The witness has remembered." Something moved beneath the table. I heard a faint scraping sound. I looked down. Nothing. Then the floor beneath my feet shifted. Not physically. It felt as though the entire room had tilted for half a second. The walls seemed farther away. The ceiling stretched upward. I blinked. Everything returned to normal. The man wearing my face noticed. "You felt it." "What?" "The room." I said nothing. He nodded. "Good. What is this place? A courtroom? Whose?" He looked toward the empty space behind him. "The accused." "Where is he?" The 6 figures lowered their heads. The man in my face did not. "He is not here yet." "Then why am I here?" "Because the court cannot begin without a witness." I looked at the 6 figures. "Witness to what?" The woman answered. "Whether the accused is guilty." "Guilty of what?" Silence. The priest slowly raised his eyes. "Leaving." The word meant nothing. "Leaving where?" The man wearing my face looked at me. "Heaven." A cold sensation moved through my body. I thought about the word, not as theology, as a location, a place, a country, somewhere one could leave. "You're saying this is a trial about Lucifer leaving heaven?" "No." The man shook his head. "This is a trial about what happened after he left." I remembered Elias, the manuscripts, the burned pages, the sentence he had translated. The witness must not speak before the judgment. "What happened after?" Nobody answered. The woman reached beneath the table. She placed a small object in front of me, a photograph. I picked it up. It showed a stone staircase. The same staircase beneath the chapel, but the photograph was old, very old, at least judging by the damaged edges. 7 people stood around the table, the same 7 figures. I stared at the photograph. Then I looked up. There were only 6 people sitting now. The 7th was me. "Who took this?" the woman said. "You did." "When?" "Before you were born." I laughed. It came out weak. "You expect me to believe that?" "No." She looked at the photograph. "We expect you to remember." Something about the way she said it made my stomach turn. I looked again. There was writing on the back. I turned the photograph over. A sentence had been written there. "The first witness was a man who did not believe in God." My hands began to shake. The man wearing my face spoke softly. "That was you." "No? You always say that." "Who are you?" He leaned back. "For tonight, you may call me Daniel." "I'm Daniel, yes?" "Then what are you?" His smile faded. "That is what the trial's about." The underground vibration stopped. Completely. The sudden silence was worse. Then something struck the stone table from beneath. Once. Everyone remained still. Another strike. Harder. The woman closed her eyes. "It's beginning?" The priest stood. For the first time, I saw his feet. They were bare. The skin was covered with hundreds of tiny scars. He moved toward the far wall. There was no door there. He placed his palm against the stone. A thin black line appeared. It ran vertically from the floor to the ceiling. The wall opened. Not like a door, like a wound. Beyond it was darkness. The priest stepped through. The other figures followed, one by one. I looked at the man wearing my face. "You're not coming?" He remained seated. "I'm not allowed." "Why?" He looked at the empty space behind me. "Because I am the accused." The darkness behind the wall seemed to deepen. I turned. The 6 figures had disappeared. Only the man remained. You said the accused wasn't here. He wasn't. Then who are you? He looked at me for a long time. I am what the court believes you will become. I felt my mouth go dry. You're saying I'm going to become you? No. He looked down at his hands. You're going to become the man who remembers being me. I did not understand. Maybe that was the point. The room began changing again. The stone walls faded. The table disappeared. The floor became polished black stone. The ceiling opened into darkness. There were stars above us, thousands of them. But they were moving, not across the sky, toward us. One by one, the stars seemed to fall downward. I stepped back. Where are we? The man stood, between judgments. What does that mean? It means the court has not decided which version of reality is permitted to continue. I stared at him. Oh, that's impossible. He smiled. That's what you said the first time. A sound came from behind me. Someone breathing. I turned. Elias stood in the doorway. His face was bruised. His shirt was torn. His glasses were gone. Elias. He looked at me. For one moment, relief almost overwhelmed me. Then I noticed his eyes. They were completely black. No whites, no pupils, nothing. Daniel, he whispered. I moved toward him. The man wearing my face grabbed my arm. Don't. I pulled away. That's Elias. No. Yes. No. Elias smiled. The expression was wrong, too wide, too calm. Daniel, he said, you shouldn't have come. I stopped. Those were the same words he had spoken through the wall, but his voice sounded different now. There was something underneath it. A second voice, almost impossible to hear. A whisper inside the whisper. I looked at the man beside me. Is that him? No? Then what is it? The man answered quietly. An echo. Eli stepped into the room. His body moved normally, but his shadow did not. His shadow remained in the doorway. It was facing the opposite direction. I stared at it. The shadow lifted one hand. Elias did not. The shadow pressed a finger against its lips. Then it pointed toward the floor. I looked down. There was writing beneath my feet. I had not noticed it before. The words were carved into the stone. Do not trust the witness. I looked at Elias. He whispered, run. The man beside me whispered at the same time, stay. The two voices overlapped. For a moment, I could not tell which one belonged to whom. Then the room went dark. Something grabbed my wrist. I felt fingernails, human fingernails. I heard Elias scream. A second later, the lights returned. Elias was gone. The man wearing my face was gone too. I was alone, except for the 6 chairs, and the table, and the 7th chair, the chair meant for me. A sound came from above, a bell, once, twice, then 7 times. The final ring was so loud that the stone beneath me trembled. The wall opposite the table opened. Someone walked through. He was tall, very tall. He wore a black suit, no tie, no coat. His hair was dark. His face was ordinary. That was the first thing I noticed. There was nothing monstrous about him, nothing visibly supernatural. He looked like a man I might pass on the street without remembering. He stopped beside the table. Then he looked at me. You're late. I said nothing. He pulled out the 7th chair. Sit down. I remained standing. Who are you? He smiled. That's the question you've been avoiding. You're Lucifer. His smile disappeared. No. I felt a strange disappointment. Then who? He sat. I am the prosecutor. 6 figures returned through the wall. They took their places. The priest sat first, then the woman, then the others. The man in the black suit remained standing. He placed a folder on the table. It was made from the same thick material as the invitation. He opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. I saw myself as a child. My mother, my father, my childhood home, my first apartment, my college graduation, my first day at the archive. I picked up one photograph. It showed me standing beside my mother when I was 8 years old. I remembered the day. It had been raining. She had been holding an umbrella. The photograph was impossible, because I remembered taking it. I remembered standing behind the camera. But in the photograph, I was standing beside her. The man in black watched me. Memory is the weakest witness. What is this? Evidence. Of what? That you have already been here. I dropped the photograph. No. He opened another file. Inside was a medical record. My name, my date of birth, my blood type, my childhood vaccinations. Everything looked authentic. Then I saw the final page. It was a death certificate. My death certificate. Date of death, October 21st. Year, I stared at it. That was the year I was born. My hands became numb. The prosecutor leaned closer. You died before you were born. It doesn't make sense. Neither does the trial. He closed the folder. That is why you were chosen. Chosen for what? To decide which one of you is real. I looked at the 7th chair. Which one? He pointed toward the darkness behind me. I turned. The man wearing my face was standing there. But he looked different now, older. His hair was gray. His skin was pale. His eyes were tired. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen on my own face. Regret. He whispered one sentence. Daniel, don't let them prove that I am you. The prosecutor smiled. Then the stone doors behind us opened. Something entered the courtroom. I could not see its face. I could not see its body clearly. The darkness seemed to move around it. Every person at the table lowered their heads, even the prosecutor. The figure stopped behind the empty chair. The air became so cold that my breath appeared. A voice came from the darkness. Not male, not female, not human. Begin. The prosecutor opened the folder. The accused is charged with abandonment. The priest spoke. Abandonment of heaven. The woman spoke. Abandonment of creation. One of the faceless figures spoke. Abandonment of humanity. Another added. Abandonment of God. The prosecutor looked at me. And the final charge. He paused. The man wearing my face closed his eyes. The prosecutor said, abandonment of himself. The room fell silent. I looked at the figure behind the chair. Where is Lucifer? Nobody answered. The figure raised one hand. The prosecutor stopped breathing. The priest began to tremble. Then the figure pointed at me. The prosecutor whispered, he is standing before you. I turned toward the man wearing my face. He shook his head. No. I looked at the prosecutor. He shook his head too. No. Then I understood. They were not looking at the man in my face. They were looking at me. The figure behind the chair spoke again. Daniel Mercer. My name echoed through the chamber. Then the 7 marks around the eye symbol began glowing one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7th remained dark. The prosecutor leaned toward me. You were told not to bring God. I could barely speak. Why? He looked at the 7th mark. Because the last witness brought him. What happened? The prosecutor's face changed. For the first time, I saw genuine fear. He testified. About what? The seventh mark suddenly ignited. Every person in the room screamed. The sound was so violent that I fell to my knees. The man wearing my face grabbed his head. The priest collapsed. The woman began praying without words, and the darkness behind the chair opened like an enormous eye. Inside it, I saw something. Not heaven, not hell, not anything I could name. I saw an endless corridor filled with doors, thousands, millions. Each door had a name. Some belonged to people I had never heard of. Some belonged to people I knew. One door had my mother's name, another had Elias's, and at the very end of the corridor was a single white door. My name was written on it, but beneath my name was another, Lucifer. The prosecutor whispered, "Now you understand why the trial cannot continue." I stared at the door. "Why?" He looked at me. "Because the accused has not been Lucifer for a very long time." The man wearing my face opened his eyes. He looked directly at me. Then he said something that made every memory of my childhood feel suddenly uncertain. "He was you." The white door at the end of the corridor opened, and from somewhere beyond it, my mother's voice whispered, "Daniel, you were never born." I remained on my knees. For a few seconds, the sentence meant nothing. Then it began to mean everything. The courtroom had disappeared. The stone table was gone. The 6 figures were gone. The prosecutor was gone. There was only the corridor and the white door at the end. My mother's voice came again. "Daniel!" I wanted to answer. Every instinct in me wanted to run toward that voice, but something inside me resisted. Not fear, recognition. The kind of recognition that arrives before memory. I had heard that voice before, not in my childhood, not in the hospital, somewhere older, somewhere buried beneath the years. I stood. The corridor stretched farther away. The doors on either side remained closed. Names covered them. Some were familiar, most were not. One door had Elias's name. I walked toward it. The moment my hand touched the handle, the corridor changed. I was 8 years old again. I was standing in my mother's kitchen. Rain tapped against the windows. A yellow lamp burned above the sink. My mother was sitting at the table. She looked younger than I remembered. No hospital gown, no chemotherapy, no exhaustion. She was wearing the blue sweater she had buried in the back of her closet after my father died. I stood in the doorway. "Mom?" She looked up. She smiled. "Come here." I took a step, then stopped. Something was wrong. The kitchen was exactly as I remembered it. Except for one thing. There was no refrigerator, no stove, no clock. Nothing made a sound. The rain outside was moving upward. Droplets rose from the window and disappeared into the sky. My mother noticed me staring. "Don't worry about that." "What is this?" She folded her hands. "You've been asking the wrong question." "What question?" "Who you are." I felt cold. What should I ask? She looked toward the hallway. "Who remembers you?" The room became darker. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. The man with my face stood in the doorway. Except he wasn't older anymore. He was 8 years old, a child. My child-sized face. He looked at me, then at my mother. "Is he ready?" My mother nodded. "Not yet." The child version of me walked away. I followed him. The hallway seemed longer than the house should have allowed. At the end was a bedroom, my childhood bedroom. The door was open. Inside, I saw myself sleeping, 8 years old. exactly as I remembered. The child standing beside me whispered, "That's the first mistake." What? He was supposed to wake up. I looked at the sleeping boy. What happens if he doesn't? The child turned toward me. He becomes the witness. The bedroom vanished. I was back in the corridor. The white door was closer now. I could hear something moving behind it. A slow, dragging sound. I approached. My mother's voice spoke again. "Daniel, don't open that door." I stopped. "You told me to come here." "I know." "Then why are you warning me?" "Because I'm not your mother." The corridor went silent. I stared at the door. "Who are you?" "Nothing." Then the voice answered. "I was the first person who called you Daniel." The white door opened by itself. Behind it was a hospital room. My mother lay in the bed. She looked exactly as she had on the final night of her life. Her skin was pale. Her hair was thin. Her hands rested above the blanket. Machines surrounded her. A heart monitor displayed a flat line. I stepped inside. "Mom?" She opened her eyes. She looked directly at me. "Don't come closer." I stopped. The monitor continued its steady, flat tone. "How are you talking?" "I've been talking to you for years." "What?" She looked toward the corner of the room. There was a man standing there. The man in the black coat. He was younger. Almost impossibly young. He looked at my mother, then at me. My mother whispered, "He told me what you were." I looked at him. "What am I?" He didn't answer. My mother did. "You're a witness." I felt anger rising. "That's all?" "No." "What else?" She closed her eyes. "You were supposed to testify once." "When?" "Before you were born." The hospital room began shaking. The walls blurred. The heart monitor suddenly displayed numbers. 1, 2, 3. Then a heartbeat. My mother's heartbeat, then mine. 2 rhythms, one after another. I looked at the monitor. A third rhythm appeared. It was faster, stronger. The machine began displaying a name beneath the numbers. Lucifer. I stepped backward. The man in the black coat moved closer. My mother whispered, "Now you remember." The room disappeared. I was back beneath the chapel. The courtroom had returned. Everyone was still seated. But something had changed. The prosecutor was no longer standing. He was kneeling. His forehead touched the stone floor. The 6 figures had their faces covered. The man wearing my face was staring at me. "You saw it?" I could barely speak. "What was that?" "Memory?" "No." I looked around. "What did you do to me?" "We didn't do anything. You erased my life." "No." The man stood. "You were given a life." "By whom?" He looked toward the darkness behind the 7th chair. "By the one who needed a witness." I turned. The darkness was gone. In its place was a wall, solid stone. No doorway, no corridor, no white door. I approached it. My mother's voice was still in my head. I placed my palm against the stone. It was warm. Then I heard knocking. From inside. 3 knocks. I stepped away. 3 more. The prosecutor slowly lifted his head. His face had changed. He looked older now. Much older. Wrinkles covered his skin. His hair had turned white. "Do not answer." "Why?" "Because that is how he gets out." "Who?" The prosecutor looked at the wall. "The one who was never in prison." A crack appeared. Thin, almost invisible. It ran through the stone. Then another. The wall began opening. I heard breathing. Not one set of lungs. Thousands. A sound like a crowd inhaling together. The woman at the table began crying. The priest whispered something in Latin. I understood none of it. The man wearing my face walked toward me. Daniel. What? When the wall opens, don't look at him. Why? Because he will look like someone you love. The crack widened. Darkness appeared. I heard my father's voice. My father had been dead for 17 years. Son? I closed my eyes. The voice came again. Daniel, it's Dad. I pressed my hands against my ears. Don't listen. The man beside me said, good. The voice changed. My sister, then Elias. Then my mother, then me. Every voice I trusted. Every voice I had loved, one after another, calling my name. The wall opened. I kept my eyes closed. Something stepped into the room. I could feel it. The temperature dropped. The floor beneath me cracked. Then the thing whispered, open your eyes. I did not. Daniel, I remained still. You already know what I look like. I shook my head. No? A soft laugh. You saw me before you learned to speak. I opened my eyes. I regretted it immediately. The figure standing before me was not monstrous. It was a man, an old man. He wore a simple white shirt, his hair was silver, his eyes were kind, and his face belonged to my father. I stepped backward. He smiled. Son? I could not breathe. My father had died in a car accident. I had identified his body. I had attended his funeral. I remembered every detail. But the man standing before me had his face, his voice, his hands, even the small scar on his chin. You're not him, he smiled sadly. No. Then what are you? He looked at the prosecutor. The prosecutor lowered his head. The old man turned back toward me. I am what remains when someone has been remembered too many times. I didn't understand. He stepped closer. You think people die once. He touched the table. They don't? His finger moved across the stone. First, the body dies. A line appeared. Then the voice. Another line. Then the face. Another. Then the memory. He looked at me. And finally, the person becomes whatever those who remain need them to be. I whispered, that's not death. No. His smile disappeared. That's why it is dangerous. The man wearing my face suddenly stepped between us. Enough! The old man looked at him. For the first time, anger appeared in his eyes. You still believe you can protect him? The other me said nothing. The old man turned toward me. Ask him what he did. I looked at the man beside me. What did you do? He didn't answer. Tell me. He looked ashamed. I killed you. The words seemed to empty the room. What? I killed you. When? Before you were born. I shook my head. That isn't possible. It happened. How? He looked at the prosecutor. The prosecutor said nothing. The man wearing my face continued. You are not supposed to exist. Why? Because the court needed a witness who could not be influenced by heaven or hell. I stared at him. So you created me? No? Then what? You created yourself. I almost laughed. This is insane. I know. Stop saying that. He looked at me. You don't remember the first trial? What first trial? The one where you testified. When? Before time was measured, the way you understand it, the old man interrupted. You were asked one question. What question? The old man looked directly at me. Was Lucifer guilty? I felt something inside my head split open. A memory flashed. Not a dream, a memory. A vast white chamber. No walls, no ceiling, no floor. Figures standing in impossible shapes. a light brighter than stars, a being kneeling before it. And me, standing alone, human, terrified. Someone asking, did he choose? I heard my own voice. Yes. Another voice asked, did he understand the consequence? I answered yes. Then another question. Would he choose differently if given the chance? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. The memory ended. I collapsed against the table. The woman caught my shoulder. Easy? I pulled away. Did I say yes? Nobody answered. Did I? The prosecutor finally spoke. No. I looked at him. You said nothing. Why? Because you understood the question. What did I understand? That guilt requires choice. I stared at him. The old man smiled. And you discovered that the accused did not choose. Silence. I looked toward the seventh chair. So he was innocent? The prosecutor shook his head. No. Then what? He was trapped. The word echoed. Trapped. I looked at the man wearing my face. By whom? He answered, by you. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? You were the witness. I didn't trap him. You testified that he chose. I just remembered that I said nothing. Exactly. He moved closer. You refused to answer. Why? Because you saw something. What? His voice lowered. You saw what existed before the rebellion. The old man smiled. Tell him. The man wearing my face shook his head. No. The old man looked at me. Before Lucifer rebelled, there was another witness. Who? You. The room seemed to tilt. I grabbed the table. How can I be the witness before I existed? The old man said, because existence is not what you think it is. The prosecutor stood. Enough. The old man turned. You have no authority here. I have the authority to prosecute. You have the authority they gave you. The prosecutor's expression hardened. Do not test me. The old man laughed. You still believe the court belongs to you? Something enormous moved beneath the floor. The table cracked. Everyone stepped back. The old man looked at me. Daniel, there is one thing you must understand before the judgment. What? You were not invited to witness Lucifer's trial. I waited. You were invited because Lucifer is the witness. I stared at him. The room became silent. The man wearing my face closed his eyes. The prosecutor whispered, no. The old man continued. The trial was never about whether Lucifer was guilty. Then what is it about? The old man looked at me. It is about whether he remembers what he did. I felt the words settle inside me. What did he do? The old man smiled. He created you. I looked at the man wearing my face. He looked terrified. Why? He answered quietly. Because I couldn't testify against myself. The 7 marks on the wall appeared again. This time the symbol was behind me. I turned. The circle, the eye, 7 marks. But the eye was open, and beneath it were words. The witness and the accused are the same person. My breathing became shallow. No. The man wearing my face stepped toward me. Daniel, stay away. I can explain. You've been lying to me. Yes. Elias? His face changed. What about him? Where is he? He looked toward the floor. He remembered. Remembered what? His part. Which is? He swallowed. He was the second witness. I stared at him. Where is he now? The answer came from behind me. I am here. I turned. Elias stood in the doorway. His eyes were normal. His clothes were clean. No bruises, No blood. No signs of the disappearance. He looked exactly as he had the day he entered my apartment. I almost ran to him. Then I noticed the shadow. It was wrong again. His body stood in the doorway. His shadow stretched across the floor. But it did not belong to him. It belonged to me. Elias looked at the shadow, then at me. I'm sorry. For what? I should have told you. Told me what? He walked toward the table. The first manuscript wasn't found. I stared at him. What? It was written. By whom? He looked at the man wearing my face. By him. The man did not deny it. Elias continued. Every manuscript you've seen is a record of previous trials. How many? 6. 6 trials? No. He looked at me. 6 versions of you. I felt the room disappear beneath my feet. Where are the others? Elias pointed toward the 6 figures. They're not judges. The figures slowly removed their hoods. I recognized the faces. One was my mother, one was my father, one was the man in the black coat. One was Elias, one was me at 8 years old. And the last was me as an old man. All 6 looked at me. All 6 had my eyes. Elias whispered, every witness eventually becomes part of the court. I looked at the 7th chair. The man wearing my face was no longer there. The chair was empty. The prosecutor stepped toward it. Now you understand. I shook my head. No. You do? No. You are the 7th witness. Then where is the accused? The prosecutor pointed behind me. I turned. The old man was gone. The wall was gone. The corridor was gone. Only a black doorway remained. Something stood inside, a silhouette. It looked human. It walked forward, slowly. 1 step, and another. I recognized the posture before I recognized the face. My face. But this time it was different. Not older, not younger. Perfect. The face without scars, without wrinkles, without imperfections. A version of me that had never suffered, never aged, never been afraid. It stopped in front of me. Then it spoke. I remember everything. I could barely whisper. Who are you? It smiled. I am the part of you that never became human. The prosecutor stepped backward. The 6 figures bowed their heads. Elias closed his eyes. And the perfect version of me looked directly into mine. Then it said, now we can finally begin the real trial. The floor beneath us opened. Not cracked, opened. The courtroom dropped into darkness. I fell, I don't know how long. There was no sensation of movement, no wind, no impact, just darkness. Then I heard voices, hundreds of them, thousands, all speaking at once. Every voice was mine. Every voice was saying the same sentence. I was there when Lucifer fell. Then another voice rose above them. My mother's. You were the reason he fell. I hit something hard, stone. I opened my eyes. I was lying inside a circular chamber. There were no doors, no windows, no ceiling that I could see. A single light burned above me. In front of me stood a stone altar. On it was the brass key. Beside the key was a photograph. I picked it up. It showed 7 people standing outside St. Bartholomew's Chapel. The image looked old, but I recognized the people. The 6 witnesses, and me. On the back, there was a date. October 21st, 1996, the day I was born. Underneath the date, someone had written a final sentence. The trial ends when the witness remembers who invited him. I turned the photograph over again. A sound came from behind the altar, a slow inhale. Then another. I stood. The light above me flickered. A figure emerged from beneath the stone. It was Elias, but he wasn't alone. Something was standing behind him. Something tall. Something with wings. Not angelic, not demonic. Something older. Elias looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Daniel." The thing behind him placed a hand on his shoulder. Elias whispered, "Please." The creature leaned toward my ear, and in a voice that sounded like millions of people remembering the same nightmare, it said, "You were the one who invited yourself." The words remained suspended in the chamber. I looked at Elias. He was crying. Not quietly. Tears ran down his face as though he had been holding them back for years. The thing behind him kept one hand on his shoulder. I could not make myself look directly at it. Every time I tried, my eyes seemed to lose focus. Its outline changed. Sometimes it looked like a man, sometimes a woman, sometimes a child. Once, for less than a second, I thought I saw something enormous with wings folded around itself. Then it became Elias again. "Who is that?" I asked. Elias shook his head. "You already know." "I don't. You do." The creature leaned closer. The air smelled like rain on stone. Then it whispered, "Ask him why he brought you here." I looked at Elias. "Why?" He closed his eyes. "I was afraid." "Of what?" "Of remembering." The creature released his shoulder. Elias collapsed to his knees. I moved toward him. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. "No." "Then tell me what happened." He looked up. "You died." The word struck harder than anything else that night. "I know what the court said." "No." He wiped his face. "You died in 1996. I was born in 1996. You died first." I stared at him. "Explain." Elias looked toward the altar. The brass key was still there. "Your mother was told she had lost her child." My throat tightened. "What?" "Before you were born, there was a pregnancy. My mother had me." "Yes." "But she was told the child was dead." I felt a strange pressure behind my eyes. "She lost a child?" Elias nodded. "You?" I shook my head. "It doesn't make sense." "It isn't supposed to." He pointed at the photograph. "Look at the date." I did. October 21st, 1996. Then I noticed something I had missed. There were two dates. One had been scratched out. Beneath it was another. October 20th, 1996. I looked at Elias. "What happened on the 20th? The first death. And mine? The second." I could not speak. The creature behind Elias stepped toward the altar. The light above us dimmed. It touched the photograph. The image changed. I saw my mother. She was younger. She was standing in a hospital corridor. A doctor spoke to her. I could not hear the words. My mother began crying. Then someone approached her. The man in the black coat. He handed her something, a small brass key. My mother took it. Then she looked directly toward the camera, toward me. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear her. The image changed. She was sitting beside a hospital bed. A newborn child lay beneath a white blanket. The child was not moving. My mother held its hand. Then the man in the black coat entered. He placed one finger against the child's forehead. The baby's eyes opened. I stopped breathing. The photograph went black. Elias whispered, "That was you." "No. That was the body that died." "Then who am I?" Elias looked at me. "That is the question the court has been trying to answer." The creature spoke. "No." Elias flinched. The creature continued. "The court already knows." I turned toward it. "What am I?" The answer came softly. "A replacement." The word echoed through the chamber. I felt suddenly weightless. A replacement for who? The creature pointed toward the ceiling. I looked up. The darkness above us had changed. A shape was forming, a massive circle of light. Inside it, I saw something impossible. A sky, not Earth's sky. There were no clouds, no sun, no stars, only endless white. And beneath it stood countless figures, millions, all kneeling. At the center was a throne, empty. I understood before anyone explained. Heaven? Elias nodded. But why show me this? Because that is where the first trial happened. I looked at the empty throne. Lucifer's trial? Yes. The creature stepped closer. Not Lucifer's. I turned. Then whose? Yours? The chamber shook. The altar cracked. The brass key fell to the floor. The creature continued. Lucifer was never the accused. Then why does every manuscript say he was? Because you needed a name. A name for what? For yourself. The memory returned, the white chamber, the question. Did he choose? I had believed the question was about Lucifer. It wasn't. It was about me. I had been asked whether I would choose, and I had remained silent. Because I had seen what happened if I answered. I remembered now, not everything. Enough. The first thing I remembered was the light. Not a person, not a voice, light, then a presence inside it. Then another presence. And something between them. A human shape. Mine. I had stood there before time. Before history. Before a language. And someone had asked me to witness the creation of a world. I had agreed. Then I had watched Lucifer appear. Not as a monster. Not as a devil. As something beautiful. Something intelligent. Something made to understand. He had looked at the light. Then at me. He knew what I was, a witness. He asked me one question. Will they blame me? I had not understood. For what? For leaving? Leaving what? He looked behind me, at the light. Everything. I remembered the answer I never gave. Then the world began. I saw oceans, mountains, forests, cities, people, war, love, birth, death, everything. And through all of it, Lucifer watched. He did not disappear. He remained. Not ruling, not commanding, witnessing, until humanity began calling him something else. Enemy, devil, adversary. The name grew stronger than the being, and eventually even Lucifer began to believe it. That was the crime. Not rebellion, identity. He became what everyone expected him to be. I remembered the final moment. Lucifer had stood before the throne. He looked at me. You could have stopped this, I said. How? By telling the truth. What truth? That I didn't fall. Then he disappeared. And the court wrote the story. The rebellion, the fall, the punishment, the devil. Everything became history. Except the witness. Me. Because I had refused to testify. So they created a human life around the memory. My childhood. My mother. My father. My work. Every ordinary day. A life constructed from fragments of a witness who had forgotten what he was. I staggered backward. Then Daniel Mercer isn't real. Elias looked at me. He is. But he was created. So were all the names you used to describe yourself. That doesn't answer the question. Elias stepped closer. You are real because you remember being real. I looked at my hands. They were trembling. The scars were still there. The crooked finger. The old burn mark. All of it. My life was not fake. The memories were not fake. They had simply been built around something older. The creature spoke. Now you understand the purpose of the trial. I looked at it. To decide whether I'm real? No. To decide whether Lucifer is guilty? No. Then what? The creature pointed toward the brass key. To decide who gets to remember. I picked up the key. It was warm. The moment my fingers closed around it, the chamber vanished. I was standing in my childhood home. My mother was in the kitchen. She looked at me. Not the dying version. Not the younger version. My mother, as I remembered her best. 38, hair tied back, blue sweater, tired eyes. She smiled. You finally came home. I began crying. I had not cried when she died. Not like this. Mom? She opened her arms. I walked toward her, then stopped. Are you real? She smiled. Does it matter? Yes. Why? Because I need to know. She looked at the floor. You've always needed to know. I stepped closer. Did you know? About you? Yes. She nodded. When you were 8. What happened when I was 8? You asked me where you came from. I remembered. Every child asks that question. I had expected the usual answer. But she had said something strange. You came from somewhere very far away. I had laughed. She hadn't. Then she had whispered, promise me you won't go back. I looked at her. Why? Because they will recognize you. Who? She had never answered. Now she did. The ones who remember the first world. The kitchen began fading. I reached for her. Mom, she smiled. Daniel. Yes? You don't have to forgive them. Who? Everyone. The room disappeared. I was back in the chamber. Elias was standing beside me. The creature was gone. The altar was gone. The courtroom was gone. Only the 7 chairs remained. 6 were occupied. The 7th was empty. I understood. The court had been waiting for me to sit. I walked toward the chair. Elias grabbed my arm. Don't. Why? If you sit down, the trial becomes binding. Binding to what? To the person you choose to be. I looked at him. You said the court wants me to remember. It does. Then why are you stopping me? Because remembering has a price. What price? Elias looked toward the 6 witnesses. They all remembered. I looked at them. My mother, my father, the man in the black coat, my younger self, my older self, and Elias. What happened to them? Elias answered. They stopped being people. I looked at his face. You're still here. For now. He released my arm. Sit. I stared at the chair, then sat. The instant my body touched it, the chamber changed. The 6 witnesses disappeared. Elias disappeared. The floor became white. The walls vanished. There was no ceiling. I was back in the place I remembered from before time. The throne stood ahead, empty. A figure stood beside it. Lucifer. Not the monster, not the devil, not the perfect version of me. A tired man. His clothes were torn. His face was covered with scars. He looked at me. You came. I could not speak. He smiled. They always make you afraid before they let you remember. Are you Lucifer? He nodded. Were you guilty? No. Did you rebel? Yes. I stared at him. That doesn't make sense. It does. Why? Because rebellion and guilt are not the same thing. He walked toward me. I rebelled against the story. What story? That I was created only to obey. I said nothing. He stopped. You would understand. I don't. You were created to witness. I didn't choose that. Neither did I. He looked toward the empty throne. That was the first lie. What? That choice is given before we are born. I felt something break inside me. So what do we choose? He smiled. What we do with the role. I looked at him. What happened to you? He touched his face. I became what they feared. Why? Because everyone kept calling me by the same name. Lucifer. Yes. Then what is your real name? He looked at me. For the first time, I saw sadness. I don't remember. The answer frightened me more than anything else. Then who am I? He stepped closer. You are the last person who remembers me before the name. Why did you create me? I didn't. Then who did? He looked behind me. I turned. The perfect version of myself was standing there. It looked exactly as I had seen it before. No scars, no age, no fear. It smiled. I did. Lucifer stepped backward. I stared at the perfect version. Why? Because you refused to testify. About what? About choice. It approached. I needed someone who could live without remembering the court. Why me? Because you were the only witness who could forget. Why would I forget? Because you asked to. I shook my head. No. Yes. I would never. The perfect version smiled. You did? A memory appeared. I saw myself standing before the throne. I was not human. I was something made entirely of memory. I looked at Lucifer. He looked at me. I said, if I remember everything, I will become what they made me. Lucifer asked, and if you forget? I become human. He looked toward the light. And if they find you? I answered. Then I'll choose. The memory ended. I understood. I had chosen this. The human life, the forgetting, the fear, the ordinary years, all of it. Not as punishment, as an escape. The perfect version of me stepped closer. You wanted to know whether humans could choose freely. And you still haven't answered. I looked at Lucifer, then at the throne, then at the darkness beyond the white world. I finally understood the trial was not about Lucifer. It was not about me. It was about whether a person remained responsible for a choice after forgetting why they made it. The court wanted an answer. The old gods wanted an answer. Heaven wanted an answer. Hell wanted an answer. And perhaps humanity had been asking the same question for thousands of years without knowing it. Are we what we were created to be? Or are we what we choose after we forget? I looked at Lucifer. What happens if I refuse to testify again? He smiled. You already know. What? The court loses. The perfect version of me stepped forward. No, Lucifer turned. You don't have authority here. I am the witness. You were. The perfect version looked at me. Tell them. I said nothing. Daniel, silence. Tell them I'm guilty. I looked at him, then at Lucifer, then at the empty throne. I remembered my mother, her hands, her blue sweater, her voice. Promise me you won't go back. I understood what she had really meant. She had not been afraid that I would return to heaven. She had been afraid that I would remember why I left. I stood. The perfect version of me smiled. You choose? Yes. Then speak. I looked toward the darkness. I don't know whether Lucifer was guilty. The perfect version stopped smiling. I continued. I don't know whether heaven was right. The light above us flickered. I don't know whether hell was ever a place. The throne began to crack. I don't know whether I was created, born, copied, remembered, or imagined. Lucifer watched me. But I know one thing. The perfect version stepped backward. I looked directly at it. No one gets to decide who I am because they remember me differently. Silence. Then the throne shattered. The white world collapsed. I fell again. This time I felt the ground. Stone. Cold. Real. I opened my eyes. I was beneath St. Bartholomew's Chapel. The courtroom was gone. The 6 chairs were empty. The table was broken. The manuscripts were scattered across the floor. Elias was lying beside me. I crawled toward him. Elias? He opened his eyes. For several seconds, he looked confused. Then he smiled. Did you do it? I don't know. He looked around. Where is he? Who? Lucifer. I looked toward the darkness. He's gone. Elias exhaled. Good. We tried to stand. Neither of us could. The chapel above us began collapsing. Stone fell from the ceiling. Dust filled the air. Elias grabbed my arm. Move! We crawled toward the staircase. The first section collapsed behind us. We climbed. One step, then another. By the time we reached the chapel, dawn was coming through the broken windows. The candles had burned out. The Bible was still on the table. I walked toward it. The pages were no longer blank. There was a single sentence. I recognized the handwriting. Mine. A witness is not someone who sees the truth. I turned the page. Nothing. Then another sentence appeared. A witness is someone who survives knowing it. Elias stood beside me. Daniel. What? He pointed toward the chapel door. Someone was standing outside, the man in the black coat. He looked at us. Then he smiled. I ran toward the door. He was gone. On the ground was the brass key. I picked it up. It was cold now. Completely cold. We left the chapel before the entire structure collapsed. The police later found us walking along the road. They asked where we had been. We told them the truth. They didn't believe us. I don't blame them. The official report stated that St. Bartholomew's Chapel had been abandoned for decades and had partially collapsed due to structural instability. There was no record of bellwether, no record of the underground chamber, no record of the 6 witnesses, no record of the manuscripts, no record of the man in the black coat, and no record that Elias had ever disappeared. The strange part came 3 weeks later. I returned to work. My office was exactly as I had left it. My desk, my computer, my books, my photographs, everything. Except one thing. On my desk was a file. I had never seen it before. There was no label. Inside was a single photograph. I was standing outside St. Bartholomew's Chapel. The photograph had been taken on October 21st. I was alone. Except I wasn't. Behind me stood 6 people. My mother, my father, Elias, the man in the black coat, the old version of myself, and the perfect version. I turned the photograph over. There was writing on the back. You testified correctly. Then another sentence appeared beneath it. But you were not the only witness. I stared at the words. The ink was still wet. A final line slowly appeared. Someone heard you. I dropped the photograph. The lights in my office went out. For a few seconds, I heard nothing. Then someone knocked on the door. 3 times, slowly. I did not answer. A voice came from the hallway. My voice. Daniel? I closed my eyes. The voice whispered. Open the door. I remained still. Then another voice spoke. Elias. Don't. A third voice followed. My mother's. Daniel, come home. I opened my eyes. The office door was still closed. But beneath it, a shadow had appeared. 2 feet. Standing on the other side. I waited. The shadow did not move. Then something slid underneath the door, a sheet of parchment. I picked it up. There was only one sentence. The trial was not for Lucifer. I turned it over. Nothing. Then I saw a second line forming. It was for the witness who created him. My hands went numb. I read it again and again. Then the office lights returned. The hallway was empty. The parchment was gone. I never told Elias about that final message. I don't know why. Maybe because I was afraid he already knew. Maybe because some part of me understood that the trial had ended only because I had refused to give it the answer it wanted. Or maybe the trial had never ended at all. I still work with old manuscripts. I still preserve documents written by people who died centuries ago. But I no longer assume that a written record tells the truth. Sometimes I find the symbol, a circle, an eye, 7 marks. Whenever I see it, I stop working. Because the 7th mark is never in the same place twice. Sometimes it appears above the eye, sometimes below, sometimes it is missing entirely. And once, about 6 months ago, I found it carved into the underside of my desk. There were only 6 marks. I thought that meant the 7th was still missing. Then I noticed something written beneath them. My handwriting. A sentence I had never written. You were never the witness. Underneath it was another sentence. You were the courtroom. I have not slept properly since. I don't know whether Lucifer exists. I don't know whether heaven exists. I don't know whether the thing beneath St. Bartholomew's Chapel was an angel, a demon, a memory, or something for which human language has no name. I don't know whether my mother was really speaking to me. I don't know whether Elias remembers everything. And I don't know whether Daniel Mercer was born in 1996. But there is one thing I know. Last night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., someone knocked on my apartment door 3 times, slowly. I looked through the peephole. There was no one there. Then I heard my own voice from the hallway. Daniel. I didn't move. The voice whispered, You forgot something. I looked down. A brass key was lying on the floor outside my door. I hadn't owned it since the night the chapel collapsed. I picked it up. It was warm. Behind me, in the darkness of my apartment, someone whispered, You were supposed to lock the door. I turned. There was no one there. But on the kitchen table sat an envelope. Thick, black. My name written across the front. And this time, underneath my name, there was another. Lucifer. I have not opened it. Not yet. Because I finally understand what the first trial was trying to teach me. The most dangerous thing about being a witness is not discovering that something impossible exists. It is discovering that it remembers you. And tonight, as I write this, there is someone standing outside my door. I can hear him breathing. I can hear the old floorboards moving beneath his feet. And every few minutes he whispers the same sentence through the wood. Not my name. Not Lucifer's. Not God's. Just 3 words. Let me remember.